All right, so this is long overdue. Finally getting to this video that I promised I would make. Largely kind of driven by DMs on Instagram, people I've talked to at the gym, and primarily my clients. So this will help you guys get a glimpse into what I do and what I recommend in terms of meal prep. So there are a dozen different ways by which you can do this. This is not an exhaustive list, the end all be all. This is just one way to approach things, and then maybe some recommendations or tips. So to start with, all of my protein right now and for the foreseeable future is prepped for me by Virginia Beach Fit Fuel. Okay, so it makes my life very easy, and I know it's consistently being prepared the same way because Sierra herself is a bodybuilder, competitive bodybuilder, and she understands what our needs are. And it's worked very well for the last 3 shows I've done. So this is what I stick to. Consistency is the takeaway here. So whether it's meal prep, training, supplementation, whatever, your program should be built around your schedule and around some other variables so that it's not only consistent, but what plays into the other part of this consistency, and that is sustainability. So enough of that lesson. Let's just get into this. The first thing I do, so this is for tomorrow and the next couple of days. I have, 15, 20 Wolfpack containers. And this makes it wildly convenient because they fit in my Wolfpack prep bag, meal prep bag. So I can just prep these, put them in the fridge, and I'll walk you through what I do in the morning. Then I can throw them in the bag and I'm good to go for half the day. So the first thing I do, take my protein sources, which in this case is just lean beef and chicken breast. And I'm going to actually weigh them out on the scale. Of note, the scale I'm using is actually important because, as you can see, there's 2 platforms on this scale. You have a whole number side, right? And this measures all your basic units of measure, grams, milliliters, ounces, pounds, so on. This side, same units of measure, but it's analytical, meaning I have 2 additional places to the right of the decimal. All right, so I am increasing the level of accuracy when it comes to my my measurements, and this really matters when we start measuring smaller portions of things. If we're talking about your sodium, for example, or if we're talking about your oil that you're adding to your meal. In my case, I use macadamia oil. So we're going to do that in a minute. But for now, this is something I recommend people look into getting. You can get them separate, have 2 different individual scales. I do that as well, but this is a lot more convenient. So I'm going to measure out what I know I need. So I have my meat, 150 grams. I'm going to tear that out because now I'm going to measure out what I want to use for, we'll call it palatability. So flavoring this food. You don't have to, but I also use it to track sodium because I use the same amount every time, going back to that point of consistency. So my preference is Flavor Gang. Sweet poppy sauce, and then there's this rosemary barbecue sauce, which is the smoke and poppy. I typically use the sweet poppy sauce for the beef. And I'll take half a serving of this because I know what my sodium intake is, and that matches it. So what am I going to add to this for a carb? Well, the carb that goes with this meal is rice. But I don't want to put the rice in yet. Rice is a starch, right? It's just a carbohydrate, another name for this carbohydrate in particular. And why that matters is when starch cools down, it will, you'll see some congealing happening, but what's more important than that is it forms resistant starch. Resistant starch is going to have a different glycemic index than it otherwise would if it had stayed warm and didn't form resistant starch. It is going to impact digestion. There are pros and there are cons. I prefer it to be fresh. I prefer not to have resistant starch if I can avoid it, because of my objectives and where we are in prep and what I'm trying to do. So you can save that conversation for another time if we want to get into the nutrition discussion and some of the science behind it. So this will not get any rice until tomorrow morning, which takes us to our next little cool tip, which I can't take credit for, and that is the rice cooker that I use. I have multiple rice cookers. This one is for home. This KitchenAid rice cooker really does all the work for me. It has a scale inside. It measures out the rice. It has a automatic water dispenser, so it's consistent, that word again, on how much water goes in based on how much rice is in. It even warns you and will help prevent you from overfilling. You can select different settings on what type of rice. Do you want sticky rice? Is it long grain rice? Is it short grain rice? This thing is awesome, and all credit goes to Justin Shire. And I just keep stealing his ideas at this point. But he's got a lot of good ones, and this has proven very convenient and useful. You don't have to use this. You can use plenty of other rice cookers. And when I travel, I just use a Japanese rice cooker, and it does just fine. So the next meal up will be chicken breast. And I'm going to get into later preparing it yourself, right? Because not everybody's going to do meal prep. Whether it's a cost factor or whatever other reason, you just have the time and you're like, why waste the money? Then you can cook it yourself. And I do that sometimes. So I'll get into that in a second for the guys who maybe aren't as comfortable with cooking or don't know how to prep their food in that manner. For now, chicken. What I want you to take away from this goes back to digestion. And digestion doesn't start in your stomach. It starts when you actually see the food and then put it in your mouth. You start salivating first, right? You put it in your mouth, and what do you do with the food? You chew it, right? Or mastication. So that is part of physical digestion. That is very important. Physical digestion takes place in your stomach too, right? This whole churning of the food, why we say to walk after your meals, that's part of that rationale. So why am I bringing that up? Because as you can see, Sierra and her team have already sliced up the chicken. I could eat it just like it is. But to ensure I am taking my time and I'm chewing up the food and getting it into smaller portions to aid in digestion, I cut it up. It's more convenient, and I'm a child, so I like bite-sized portions. But this is what I generally recommend people do. All right? To each his own. You don't have to do this. In fact, you don't have to do anything I'm saying right now. This is just how I approach it. So, same deal. Chicken. This chicken meal is also rice. So the same thing applies. I'm going to have fresh rice in the morning that I'm going to put on here. It's going to be warm or hot. And this is another portion for the day after tomorrow. So in other words, don't just, if you can, I recommend not just prepping your meals for one day ahead. Obviously, if you have that option and you can just cook every meal fresh, go for it. But it's kind of a smart move to have meals ready to go in case emergencies pop up, right? even if you work from home, or if you have the option to have more control over that. You can't control everything. So again, with the sauce, right? And again, I cut it up just to aid in digestion. You don't have to. You can just chew longer. But I know for some of us, you get called into a meeting, or I often have to eat in a meeting, and it's just nice to be able to have smaller portions to bite into and chew, swallow. If I need to speak up, then I speak up. I don't have a mouthful of chicken. And so right there, I've got 4 meals, right? I have 1 beef for tomorrow, and honestly, what it's going to end up looking like is 2 chicken for tomorrow. I have this beef meal for the day after, and I'll continue doing this for the next 3 days worth of food. Not every single meal. The ones that I know I need to eat when I'm at work, and then 1 in case of an emergency. And that is another point that I want to recommend. Don't just make enough meals. Make more than enough to take with you, because there are factors that are within your control, and then there are external factors that are not. And you need to reduce stress as much as possible. In competitive bodybuilding, stress is, generally speaking, your enemy. And when you're in prep, stress can undo all the progress overnight. So you don't want that extra stress to exist if it doesn't have to. And being stressed out because, oh no, I'm going to miss a meal. Or, oh no, I've caused some GI distress because now I had to take 2 meals and throw them into 1 giant meal. And that's the only way I can get this food in. But the problem now is I don't have an appetite to get my next meal in. Go ahead. So another point, before I kind of move over into the next aspect I want to discuss, is this is a portable scale. I do not require my clients to have all these extra, gadgets and appliances and things, but they're inexpensive. Get it on Amazon. There's different types. But if you are in a position where you're traveling, or you're at work, or you're somewhere where you're not going to be able to account for what you need to add to your food, or you need to, let's say, for example, I'm out for a dinner meal with work, and this is something that used to happen to me a lot. And generally, I would just eat before I went. But let's say I didn't have that option. I could say, I've done this, and who cares if it's awkward? Who cares? I need 2 cups of rice. They bring the rice out, or 2 servings of rice off the menu. I can actually measure the rice out. Now, I'm not saying you need to be so anal retentive that everything they bring out, at some point you need to be reasonable. And I get it. If you're working in a diplomatic environment, or you're working in an environment where it's just unprofessional to do some of these things, and it's going to hurt you, then, be reasonable. But these are things that can help you in situations where, again, things get out of your control, and you need to regain some control to reduce stress or to mitigate some of the deviations from your plan. So just another little tidbit. Stays in my backpack typically. I just had to replace the battery. And if I ever have to, do something like that, I can. We talked about rice, but I've got clients who don't just eat rice. I don't just eat rice. If your diet calls for something that's, let's say, potatoes, it's another common one. That's also a starch. The same rule applies that we talked about resistant starches. So the difference, though, is you can prepare potatoes a number of different ways. And generally speaking, if you're going to microwave your potato, and that's how you're going to cook it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I would recommend you do it with the meal when you're ready to have it. It's going to be blazing hot, but when you try to do that in prep for days on end, and that potato is cooked and sitting in the fridge and getting all wet and nasty, it's not going to be palatable, and it's going to suck to eat, and you're going to be grossed out by it by day 4, day 3, assuming it's even still good. So depending on how you're prepping the food will shape to some degree how you're going to actually plan out your meal and how you're going to actually cook the food and prep it to take with you and when you're going to do that. So keep that in mind. Obviously, this again is non-exhaustive. I'm not going to go through every food item and try to explain to you what I think you should do, but you want to keep in mind you're planning based on all these other variables. The biggest thing is being consistent. So now, for those of you who are trying to figure out, well, I don't do meal prep service, so I don't even know how to cook. That's fine. If you don't want to Google it, I'll show you what I do. So this is just ground beef, and I'll be honest with you guys, this isn't for me. I'm not going to eat this. This is for Lindsay. So she usually does this herself, but she has been so kind to let me cook her meat for her for the demonstration of this video. All right, I'm going to let that cook a little more before I start stirring it, because I also don't want to have all that sound and annoying you guys. The next thing I want to really talk about here is flavoring your food. Bodybuilding has a bad rap for everything has to be plain, and you got to be, constantly miserable. You're just plain chicken and rice. It's not like that. It's consistency that is the key. Consistency allows you to begin to identify things when you have to troubleshoot a problem. Well, everything's been the same. What's the one thing that changed that might have led to this issue? So if you're flavoring your food consistently, everything is good digestively speaking. Everything is good just overall. Then I can work with a consistent routine and a consistent meal plan. Cannot work around somebody who one day is doing this, next day they're doing this, the third day they're doing something completely different when it comes to meal prepping their food. Because then it becomes a matter of, how do I know what is responsible for these changes when it's changing all the time? So if you want to flavor your food, do so within reason. Your coach is going to guide you, ideally. And even if you're measuring it wrong, but you're measuring it wrong all the time, coach can work with that. Coach cannot very well work around, well, today I measured with volume. Tomorrow I'm going to measure with mass. The day after that, who knows? I might not measure at all. I'm going to eyeball it. That's no good. Consistency is the message that needs to be taken away from this. So once this is cooked, I'm not going to season it. I'm not going to flavor it. Okay, because this is going to be meat that's going to span across multiple days. If I season it now, or if I try to add flavor, sauces, whatever to it now, I'm not going to be as precise when it comes to controlling those nutrients, or that sodium content, those electrolytes, etc. So I'll cook it, and then I'll use it and portion it out as I need to for the meals. Then I'll add what I'm going to add. We talk about, briefly, I mentioned, maybe one day somebody does it with volume and the other day they do it with mass. Why does that matter? Well, mass tends to be a more accurate measure. Okay. If I want to hit the target, I'm going to have more accuracy using mass than I am volume. Well, what does that mean? What do you mean volume? Well, if I pull out the measuring cup, how many people know what a meniscus is? Right? How many people understand what adhesion versus cohesion is? How many people are eyeballing it and thinking, yeah, I got 1.5 cups exactly. So it's much easier to sit here and put it on the scale and see the exact number I need to hit and know that I'm hitting it the same every time. That's as far as I'm going to go with that. We can get into scale calibration and other things, but we don't need to really go there. That's really the point when I talk about mass versus volume when measuring out your food. One is just a more consistent measure. We really want to aim for accuracy and precision, where accuracy is hitting the target, precision is hitting around the same area every time, right? So in an ideal world, you're getting both. So I want to cook this until I can get the excess moisture out. But the other point is, more importantly, you want to cook it the same way every time. Again, consistency. Because when you go to weigh this, if you have a different consistency, you have different moisture content, then are you getting the same amount of actual ground beef and protein content when you weigh it out each time? So you want to take that, that pack of meat, you want to figure out, all right, what is, my coach says, I need to have 150 grams of beef. What does that look like when I cook it this way? So I know every time this is what I'm shooting for. And this is how long I need to cook it. This is the consistency, et cetera, et cetera. All right. The thing I really want to get into next, that I get a lot of questions on, that people really struggle with, is travel. I have multiple bags that I use for travel for food. This is the latest because I wanted the Cookie Monster. And Wolfpack was doing this. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing that. Whatever cooler bag you use, as long as it's insulated, that's fine. There's some key takeaways that I want to stress here. Is this long duration travel or is it short? Are you going to be able to quickly get to refrigeration when you arrive, or is it going to be possibly delayed? What kind of foods are we talking about? Is it raw meat? Are you just traveling domestically and you're going to cook your meat when you get on site, or is it already cooked and prepared? If it's a short duration of travel, I generally tell guys, okay, just, obviously use ice packs or gel packs or whatever, and layer the top and let the cold air fall down. If it's going to be longer than a few hours of travel, then I want you to put whatever the cooling mechanism is, ice, gel packs, ice packs, in between, on the bottom and on top, so that the food is staying very cold all the way to destination. Food spoilage is no good. Wasting food is no good. The only thing worse than that is eating it and getting sick and undoing any progress you might have had and having to dig yourself out of that hole. So the other little surprise here is my food warmer. So one of the managers at DMV Iron actually turned me on to this. And as you can see, I have two means by which to power this. One is your cigarette lighter outlet and your typical socket wall outlet, right? There are several different variations of this. Some don't heat from the bottom. They actually have metal uh, containers inside that heats your food up very well and very fast. But then you actually have to clean that container out every time you want to use it. This allows me to put my Wolfpack container inside, just open the lid, and it warms it slowly. So it takes longer, but I don't have any cleanup to worry about, so I can consistently just keep using this over and over until I arrive to wherever. That's easy travel. If you're traveling and you're going to be gone for long durations of time, and you need to potentially cook on site or do something a little bit more involved than just I'll pack my meals, go, and then I have meals ready to come back and no big deal. Then I have a vacuum sealer. And what I will do is I'll cook all the meat that I can. Usually I'm gone for maybe a week at the most. So I can cook all that meat, vacuum seal it. I measure it out. I know how much meat is in the bags. And I know just with basic math how much meat I'm going to need for the trip. And I overshoot it just in case. And that makes for much less waste with space when it comes to storing the food for travel. And with it frozen, it buys me more time. So the food doesn't spoil as quickly. That's one way to do it. If cost isn't an issue or less of an issue, you can use meal prep services at the location or have them ship to the location. A lot of them will do that. I've done it before. And the only risk there is if something goes wrong with shipping. So you need a backup plan, right? You plan for your plans not to go as planned. So you always have an alternate route or an alternate option that you can go to in case the original plan doesn't work. Water. All right, you're flying. You can't take your water with you. You need to stay hydrated. I use more hydration. And what I will do is if I'm driving, I'll buy all my water in advance, throw it in the back of my truck. I'll have boxes of water. I already know how much water I'm going to need. I overshoot that as well. And I can use those to track how much water I'm getting because I know how much is in the container, right? Is it a liter? Is it a liter and a half? Is it 500 milliliters? And then I know, okay, I've got my water for this period of time and I'm good to go. So the nice thing with the more, it's electrolytes and aqueous solution. It does not lend itself to the adverse effects that you typically will hear about with other electrolyte powders and so on, where you have this edema and all these other issues that might come with that. So the other thing is it's travel convenient. You can take it on a plane. They're not going to confiscate it or make you throw it away. So I'll take that with me. I'll take an empty bottle because generally speaking, you're probably consuming your fluids already before you got to the airport. Finish that bottle, get through security, and now I can fill that bottle up and I can add however much more I need to it, and I'm good. Flying comes with another set of considerations. Is this domestic OCONUS travel? Is this our domestic CONUS travel? Is this international travel and you're having to deal with customs? That's when you need to do your homework. You need to make sure, where am I going and what are their customs policies and restrictions, regulations, and requirements when it comes to food. You can't take anything and everything everywhere. So you have to plan ahead for that. And it will depend on what country you're going through and what their customs policies are. Go ahead. So I had 2 clients this past weekend, ironically, coincidentally, taking a train. The train, so I'm familiar with the train, with Amtrak and with metros. And I will tell you, The only thing easier when it comes to traveling that through that means would be if you're just driving yourself. The Amtrak in particular provides you the option to eat on the train. They have outlets. So if you have a food warmer, you can plug it in. It really is probably one of the more easier or convenient means by which to do everything we're talking about. So if you're taking the train, it's the same rules apply that we originally talked about, and that is just preparation, making sure your food stays at the correct temperature for safety reasons, and having everything you need to eat it. If you can't warm your food up, that's okay. A couple of meals cold is going to be okay. Resistant starch is not going to throw you off to the degree that, oh no, what am I going to do? It's not that serious. So if it comes to that, that's fine. When you start talking about, I don't know what I'm going to say. Probably the biggest thing I will tell people is you have to take onus. At some point, you have to be responsible for your objective, your goal, and achieving it. So your coach is going to give you recommendations, guides. It's no different than if you go to the doctor or if you're admitted into the hospital. You can go AMA and go against the medical advice. That is your right. The same thing applies here. So you need to do your homework and check the policies on whatever means of travel you're using, and plan ahead for whatever your destination requirements might be. One scenario that happened this weekend was the individual tossed their food out because baggage claim wouldn't let them store their food. Most places aren't going to let you store food because the health inspector finds out and they're in trouble, right? There are organizations that oversee these things, and it's a public health concern technically, and that's usually not going to fly. So you need to make sure you're planning for that, whether that means you take your food into whatever place you're going into, or you just say, hey, I have it in a bag. I know it's cold enough for whatever I'm about to go do. I can come back and get it if you have other bags that you're leaving it with. But that's what you have to take into consideration. Always plan, right? Plan ahead, plan consistently. Don't take things for granted and just make assumptions. So that's as far as I'm going to go with this video. I will do more on this. This is just a starter. And I will get into how I actually organize and prep my supplements for daily use and then for travel. I think it's wildly inefficient to take every bottle of everything with you. If you have to do that, something is either wrong or you're going for a very long period of time, and you just don't have a choice. Take advantage when you can of all the plethora of services that are offered these days. They really do make things almost foolproof as far as not missing meals and adhering to whatever your plans are. So if I could, drill down any point, it's be consistent, program around your life. And the way you do that when you have a coach is explaining and communicating with them what is going on in your life. Normally that's part of the intake. But if things change and you don't tell your coach what's going on, you don't tell your coach if you're sick, you don't tell your coach if you're traveling somewhere until the last minute, or you don't communicate these critical things, your coach doesn't know what they don't know. So they can't help you. So if you want to get the most out of them, you got to put the most in. And that's one of the big things I would stress. So next time I'll do more on other ways to prep your food. I'll use the air fryer to show you guys some things, how to prep your chicken, different ways to cook your food, whether it's out on the grill, different ways to cook beef, all these other kinds of things that I think people are interested in. These are the questions I kind of get. Again, it's as complicated or as simple as you want to make it. So choose your hard, and remember, bodybuilding doesn't have to be miserable. And so I guess the last thing I'll leave you with is we're getting ready for the Oklahoma Pro. So as I'm prepping all that food for travel on the plane, and I'm packing all these things, I'll go through my packing list to show you, how I do it. And then I'll show you how we actually do the food prep so that we're, number one, traveling as light as possible. And number two, how I can do it in a way that is effective and efficient so that it's a one less stressor when I'm there. The thing that I think is often taken for granted or just missed when you're new to this is that it's okay not to take everything and to get some things when you're at the destination. You can buy apples, you can buy bananas, you can buy a number of things that prevent you from having to, maybe overpack and make it a little bit more convenient for yourself. But again, in any of those scenarios, you always want to plan for your plans not to go as planned. So have backups to your primary course of action. So until next time, this is how I do it.